Okay, welcome back. I have not been as consistent with making videos lately, and I do definitely apologize for that. Many things have come up in personal life. These videos do take a long time to edit, and I want top-of-the-line content for this YouTube channel, so I'm obviously not going to make any BS, half-ass videos. But anyways, today we have a nice, big, and long video for you guys. On Monday, March 21st, it is the trade deadline, and that is just 2 months away. But I want to discuss the top 15 trade bait players for 2022. Now, how we're going to rank it is I'm going to probably spend like 1 to 2, maybe 3 minutes on a certain player, and we're going to rank it by least valuable and least demanded to most valuable and most demanded. We'll use their stats as of February 2nd, 2022 to look at those, and then we'll use notes where I look at, the rumors around the NHL, and I filter those in there too. Now, anyways, enough of that. Let's get into number 15. Now, to start off the list, we're going to talk about a player that doesn't really have that much demand, nor that much value either, but he could become a big asset when this team makes trades with players higher up in the list. That player is Toronto Maple Leafs forward Nick Ritchie, a player who has not really done too much in the Toronto lineup this season. He's played 33 games on the bottom 6 for this team, has 2 goals, 7 assists for 9 points. Kind of a rough year when you look at the contract he was offered by this big team. Notes here. Leafs were actively trying to trade him. We saw reports, we saw articles, we even got like a public thing that the Leafs were trying to trade Nick Ritchie. As well as that, he was also waived earlier in the season. I want to say about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. I'm not too sure. Time blends in. But although there aren't teams necessarily calling in for this guy, I do think he could be a big asset if Toronto goes out and decides to trade for players on this list that are higher than him. And I'll just say this now, I'll use it as a disclaimer. I probably will use him and others above him as an example for players that could be traded for others. But anyways, moving on here to number 14. Now, if I made this list before, this guy would be definitely higher. Like, let's say if I made this at the beginning of the season, he'd probably be top 3. With the surprising success of the San Jose Sharks this season, forward Tomas Hertl's trade odds were kind of getting slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. He's played 45 games this season, has 22 goals, 16 assists for 38 points. So he's been a very solid player this season for the Sharks. For the notes, okay, so maybe not necessarily his value has died down, but his trade odds have definitely died down. And a team that seems to be interested in everyone, and we'll mention them a lot in this video, is the New York Rangers. They've seemed to be inquired with everybody. They're trying to make their team better. They're trying to get one more piece to go all the way. Now, I'm not saying that Tomas Hertl getting traded is necessarily off the table, but right now, with the Sharks' success, it doesn't seem likely. If the Sharks start sucking before March 21st, then those rumors could start up again. Now, moving on to number 13, I'm actually kind of surprised that this guy is getting as much recognition as he is getting. Now, I've had my fair share of controversy with Marc-Andre Fleury on this channel already, so I know this is probably not going to be good putting him at 13th, but I just don't see the hype in him. He's an amazing goalie, sure, on the bad team that he's played this season, but I'm not entirely too sure that teams are really going to go out for him, mostly based on his age. Now, like I said, despite being on a bad team, Marc-Andre Fleury has put up some pretty exceptional numbers. 32 games played, 14 wins, 15 losses, and 3 overtimes. For a bad team, that isn't that bad. And you look at his advanced stats, he's even better. 2.85 goals against average and a .910 save percentage. The .910 stands out for me because on a bad team that Chicago has been, he's still really good. As for notes, Washington was the latest team that expressed interest. I'm not too sure how it's going to work because I've heard things about, how Fleury is a Penguin in heart and, all this stuff like that would be betrayal and all this other stuff. So you can let me know what you think about that in the comments below. I've also heard things discussing that Marc-Andre Fleury could be a first-round pick in return for Chicago, which could be a big thing for them because they do not have one this year. Seth Jones. But regardless, it's truly going to be interesting to see where the flower goes. Now, moving on to number 12, I have a defenseman who is a little bit overrated by the Kraken. Now, don't get me wrong, Marc Giordano is a superb defenseman, but I feel like they're kind of overpricing him a teeny tiny bit. His stats this season with the Kraken are 38 games played, 4 goals, 13 assists, and 17 points. That isn't bad for a defenseman like him, but I don't like the price, as you can see in notes there. Price is a first-round pick. I'm not entirely too sure when you look at other teams on the market like Chychrun, Klingberg. We'll talk about them later. But I'm not entirely too sure that a guy like Giordano is really going to get paid a first-round pick. I've been wrong before, though. And I'm absolutely hoping I'm wrong because I like the way Marc Giordano plays, and I've been a fan of him for a long time. Now, at number 11, I have a guy who may surprise people. A guy who is on a top team in the league. That guy is Florida Panthers forward Owen Tippett. He was drafted in 2017, looked at to be as a great scorer, great playmaker, upcoming for the Panthers, and that really just hasn't worked out. So far this season, Owen Tippett has played 40 games, has 6 goals, 8 assists for 14 points. He's reportedly the center of Florida trade talks, apparently. And that's really interesting because a guy who's really young, hasn't really performed too well, he could be a big asset when you look at guys above him on this list. Now, I refer to him with Nick Ritchie as well. He's kind of a guy that could very well get traded as an asset for another player. Now, anyways, moving on into the top 10, we have a player who might surprise you with how high I have him. It is another Chicago Blackhawk. That player is defenseman Calvin Haan. He's more of a defensive defenseman for this team, but he has been looked at by some of the top teams in the NHL. Haan has played 41 games, has 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points. So, like I said, he's more defensive. But that doesn't mean teams like the Toronto Maple Leafs have shown interest. He's a good depth player to have on your team. Not only that, but he can play the defensive role as well. He has not been bad for a Chicago team that has been just brutal this season. Now at number 9 here, I have a player who is very interesting. He is a pending UFA, and he's also a defenseman for one of the better teams in the league. That defender is Josh Manson, a guy who could very well get a lot of traction in the league, and you might not even know about it. So far this season, Manson has played 43 games, has 3 goals, 4 assists for 7 points. He's played a little bit more of the defensive role for this team, but he could still be a big asset. Toronto and the Rangers seem to have expressed interest with this pending UFA, so we'll see where that goes. I've liked Josh Manson on the Ducks for a long time, and I like his play, so it would be very interesting to see what Manson could do on a bigger team like the Maple Leafs. No disrespect to the Ducks. Now at number 8 here, this guy is going to be the guy that is the real asset for this team. And this team has been interested in every single player that we've covered so far. That guy is New York Rangers forward Vitali Kravstov. A forward who has not played any games at all this season for the Rangers, but has created a lot of traction throughout the league. I do believe, though, that this guy is going to be that asset for the Rangers, like Owen Tippett, like Nick Ritchie, and he'll be the guy that if the Rangers go out for a player that's on this list that's higher than him, he will get traded back the other way. Now at number 7, we're going to take a look at one of the worst teams in the league with a player who has been doing meh. I don't think Coyotes forward Phil Kessel publicly requested a trade out of Arizona, but he kind of inferred that he doesn't really want to play for a team that's been struggling. And that's okay. He has his fair share of success in Arizona, and sometimes it is time to move on. Kessel has played 43 games, has 5 goals, 23 assists for 28 points. The funny thing is that teams that used to have him on their team are showing interest. Boston's shown interest, Toronto has shown interest, and as well as that, the Devils have previously shown interest as well. A couple other teams have too. He could be a really solid middle 6 type forward, and he can still put up solid points, maybe playing bottom 6 or middle 6 minutes, like I just mentioned. But he did also say that if the place sells good hot dogs, he doesn't give 2 Fs where he goes. Probably. We'll move on to number 6. Now, I'm going to be honest, this guy probably should be higher. He has been recognized as the most demanded player so far in the trade deadline sweepstakes. I became a fan of Arturri Lehkonen in last year's playoffs. The grit, the brutality, and the speed that he brings to the Montreal Canadiens, and that's part of the reason why they made the finals. If Lehkonen was not on that team, I don't know if they would have made the finals. I'm being entirely honest. He just brings so much to the team that is so helpful, and I feel like if you put him on a more contending team, he could really put them over the hump. On the disastrous Montreal Canadiens, Lehkonen has played 41 games, has 7 goals, 12 assists for 19 points. As I said, he's the most demanded player by reports, and a lot of teams are interested, including the Rangers, Toronto, St. Louis, Florida's inquired him, Carolina has. Like, every team that's kind of in the playoff spot right now has definitely looked at Arturri Lehkonen. He's one of those interesting forwards to look at this trade deadline. We follow that up at number 5 with another Montreal Canadien, but this guy is a defenseman It is Ben Chiarot. Now, Ben Chiarot is a really interesting defenseman for me because I feel like he is a player with a lot of potential on just a bad team. If you put him on a good team, put him top 4 pairing minutes with the right guy, I feel like he could play really, really, really solid. Chiarot has played 41 games, has 5 goals, 4 assists for 9 points. And the biggest note here, he may be worth a first-round pick, which is big for a guy like Chiarot, especially on a team that has been struggling. If you could get a first-rounder for this guy, I say the Habs would get away with that, and they would just keep running all the way to Mars. I feel like he is a guy that not a lot of people thought of, so a lot of teams may inquire on him if they haven't already. Now at number 4, we're going to go look at one of the Canadiens' biggest rivals and a forward who has faced a lot of criticism in his career. Earlier this season, Jake DeBrusk requested a trade out of Boston, and it looked really interesting because a lot of teams inquired on him in the past, and you'd think the sweepstakes would heat up even more. DeBrusk has played 37 games this season, had 7 goals, 8 assists for 15 points. Kind of mediocre numbers there when you look at it. And he has requested a trade, as I mentioned. Arizona, Toronto, and Colorado were interested. Arizona reportedly had a lot of interest. So when you look at a guy like Phil Kessel or Jakob Chychrun, we'll talk about him later, that could be a big thing. I feel like the Bruins could definitely use DeBrusk as a piece for that if they want to trade for a guy bigger than him. Now, I feel like that if you put DeBrusk on the right team, the right line, probably around the middle 6 with the right line mates, I believe that he could probably thrive, like, seriously. Now, at number 3 here, we're looking at a defenseman who had contract agreements going. It looked like it was going to be fine, and then it all went downhill. Dallas Stars defenseman John Klingberg requested a trade out of the city, mostly because he believed the Dallas Stars were not giving him the money that he deserved. Klingberg knew that he could get up to as high as $10 million on the market if he went to free agency, but there was still a part of him that wanted to stay with Dallas. Unfortunately, though, contract talks have fell through and he has requested a trade out of Dallas. Klingberg has played 36 games this season, has 1 goal, 22 assists for 23 points. As I mentioned, contract agreements did go cold, and he did request a trade. A team that inquired on him before he even requested a trade was Carolina. So maybe Carolina goes back and looks at him, because if you add Klingberg to that already stacked blue line, that would be crazy. Given that none of the defenders get traded to Dallas, you could look at a top 4 of John Klingberg, Jacob Slavin, Brett Pesce, and Tony DeAngelo. That is unreal. Moving on into number 2, we're going to talk about a player on a team that has lost 10 games in a row twice. One of those was 13 games in a row. Philadelphia Flyers forward Claude Giroux. Now, for those who don't know, I do live in the Philadelphia area. I live about an hour's drive away from Wells Fargo Center, so I definitely go to Flyers games and Phantoms games regularly. Giroux was drafted about a year before I was born, and it really breaks my heart to see all the criticism around him and all the rumors of him being traded, because I've kind of fallen in love with him and the city of Philadelphia, mainly because I was close to the city, and as well as that, I was raised in a family who is just absolutely diehard Flyers fans. Giroux has played 41 games, has 15 goals, 20 assists for 35 points. So Giroux still got it. And in his notes, he has not decided whether or not he wants to be traded, because obviously he has to waive his no movement clause. He has to waive that before he can even get traded at all. And I mean, until then, we kind of just have to wait for the inevitable end. Colorado has been one of the teams that has been most interested. And I know Drew to Ottawa, but I don't believe that would happen, mainly because Ottawa is not really a playoff team right now. It truly hurts me personally, and I definitely hope that Claude Giroux gets a big trade to a better home and wins a Stanley Cup, because he's not winning one in Philly. Now, before we go and look at number 1, we're going to take a look at some honorable mentions that didn't get onto the top 15. Joonas Korpisalo, a goaltender there for the Blue Jackets, is the big guy. 6-8-0, 3.82 goals against average, and a .887 save percentage. He's really struggled in Columbus this season, and I can't imagine he doesn't get traded, but I feel like his value might be a little bit lower than the players that I mentioned above him. Dominic Kubalik, you can make a case for him being top 15, to be honest with you. I probably should have put him in the top 15 above a guy like Nick Ritchie, but I didn't. 45 games played, 10 goals, 7 assists, 17 points. I've kind of given up on him as a player, to be honest with you. He's really struggled, and maybe it might be time to consider, well, he could have been a bust. There was players above him that were taken that were better. Tyler Toffoli, one of the last guys there. I can't imagine Toffoli doesn't get traded, but I just haven't seen any interest. 33 games played, 9 goals, 16 assists for 25 points. There are a bunch of other guys that I could talk about that I didn't in this video. I could go into a whole different video discussing other players who could potentially get traded. But let's finally move into the long-awaited number 1. Who is the player that has the most demand? Who is the player that is most likely to get traded? That guy is defenseman of the Arizona Coyotes, Jakob Chychrun. In the 2021 NHL season, Jakob Chychrun put up some exceptional numbers as a defenseman that was kind of on a mediocre team at that point. He put up the NHL leading 17 goals, and he was top 3 in defensive points. When you look at advanced stats last season, including just the regular stats, he was better than Victor Hedman. This season has been a bit of a struggle for Chychrun, mostly because he's dealt with injuries, and the Coyotes have just been god-awful. This season, Chychrun has played 32 games, has 2 goals, 6 assists for 8 points. Toronto, Carolina, the Rangers, and the Avalanche were among those interested. I also looked at St. Louis, Florida. There's so many other teams that have been interested in this guy. Apparently, the Rangers did send an offer to him. Now, the asking price was like 1 high-end prospect, 1 very good young player, and a first-round pick. That is kind of a bit of a big asking price. That's like Eichel-level asking price. And I feel like maybe they're overpricing Chychrun a little bit, but for a guy like him who's pretty much a franchise defenseman for this team, it's right to be careful. And for a Coyotes team that has been struggling badly, they could really use those assets in their insane tank and insane rebuild. Anyways, guys, that'll do it for my top 15 trade bait players ranked. Thank y'all for watching. For us personally, I really do appreciate it. If you could subscribe, that'd be great. If you made it to the end, I really appreciate it. It really helps me out. If you want to take a look at some more related videos, here's my 2021-2022 NHL playlist. All the videos that I've made so far in the 21-2022 NHL seasons right here in the eye icon. Thank y'all for watching. If you guys could let me know what your top 15 trade bait players are, your list, let me know in the comments below. But thank y'all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the